Hello, my lovely friends. How are you doing today? My name is Rue. How do you do? Today, we are going to talk about how I got my autism diagnosis. And this is an ASMR video if you're new to my channel. Sometimes we talk about autism things. And so this was like a video suggestion that one of you made, and I'm not sure why I hadn't considered it before. I guess maybe because I'm not like making like educational videos. I'm just sort of rambling about things. But like I know when I was looking for or trying to figure out how to seek diagnosis, it was really helpful to hear from other people about their experiences. So I thought I would share my like story or whatever. And we're gonna be just tapping on the puppet because it's easy and simple and it sounds good. So I was thinking about how I wanted to do this video, and I'm only going to talk about like the how I got my diagnosis and not so much the why, because I feel like if I talked about that it would be an extremely long video. So maybe that's for another time. And I just wanted to say, if you're new to my channel, I am 30 years old. I was diagnosed with autism last October. So yeah, that's what we're talking about today. And I did want to say, like, yes, I have a giant red spot on my face that was a tiny bump that I picked because I didn't like the texture, and now it's a worse texture, and yeah, I figured you guys would understand that. So that, yes, that is there. I acknowledge that. Anyways, let's get into the video because I'm not sure how long this will be. So my like diagnosis journey, I guess you could say, started in 2021, last year, around mid-year, I guess you could say. I don't know, June, July, but at the time I was working somewhere where I had really good health insurance, and like I had been researching autism for quite a while, and I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to actually like seek an autism assessment just because it's quite difficult as an adult, and just, you know, in general, like with like insurance, and it's rather difficult and it can be expensive and it's very stressful. But so at the time, last year, I was in quite a bad state, quite unwell, in a really bad burnout, and I just really was not coping well. I was working full time, and like I just wasn't well, and so I felt really desperate. And because I had this decent health insurance at the time that I knew I would never have again, I decided to go through with this process because I was like, well, it's now or never. And like, because I was struggling so much, I thought, you know, I would never be able to get help if I didn't have an official diagnosis. So I started to look into this process, and it's really confusing. There's not like a set, like, this is how you should do it. So I was like scrambling, trying to figure out like how to even approach it. And I am someone who has a lot of anxiety around like doctors and medical stuff. And that's like compounded by the fact that I live in America and health insurance is, or rather, healthcare is extremely expensive at times. So I don't go to the doctor really unless I'm absolutely desperate. It's very foreign to me and very scary, and it just kind of speaks to how desperate I was that I went through with this. So the first step that I took, because I literally had no idea where to start with this, is I found a doctor to go to, and I didn't have a GP at the time because, like I said, I don't go to doctors because I just have so much anxiety about it. I would say I started this process in June, maybe, of like looking for a doctor, and it took me several weeks because the whole process is quite overwhelming to me, and I wanted to find someone who I felt comfortable with. So I was like trying to research doctors online and find one that had like good reviews, which like that isn't really a thing. Like, so I don't know. I found some doctors that had reviews, and I found this one that I was like, okay, she sounds really good. Clearly a lot of people like her. And so I would say that this like researching sort of process took me a few weeks, because again, I was really not doing well and I was quite overwhelmed with the whole process. So I just took it in like baby steps. So eventually I had found this doctor, and I knew I had to call them to make an appointment, which I do not do well with phone calls, and so I like had to work myself up to it, I guess you could say. So eventually I got the courage to make this phone call. Like, I had probably written down a script of what I needed to say, and like it kind of threw me through a loop because the doctor that I had wanted to see was not accepting new patients, and I was like, oh god, what do I do? But they said there was this other female doctor who could see me, and that's one of my like, I won't budge on, like I have to see a female doctor because I personally don't really feel comfortable with male doctors, just because I feel like I've had worse experiences, and I know that's like stereotyping and I don't know, but it's like just a preference for me. I just feel more comfortable, and I feel like in my experience male doctors usually dismiss me a lot more and like talk down to me, so I've just learned that is not good. So I will only see a female. Anyways, so they're like, there's this other doctor you can see, and I was like, well, okay, let's do that, I guess. So I set up the appointment, blah blah blah. It wasn't too long after I had called, I don't think. And so I went to this appointment. I was freaking out, like just panicking, because like I said, I have quite bad medical anxiety. Okay, and then so I'm talking to this doctor, and I didn't mention autism because at this point I just wanted to get help for my mental health because I was so not well, and I knew, a lot of times doctors aren't super educated on, autism that isn't like this stereotypical autism. So I didn't mention that. I just was talking about my anxiety and depression at the time, and I like literally broke down in tears because I was just so overwhelmed, and I was like, I would really like for you to give me a referral to like a therapist or a psychologist. My thinking was that like going through a doctor to find someone would be easier because they could help like make the process easier. Like I wouldn't have to do all the work of finding someone to see. And she basically said like that she would get her people to send me recommendations of someone to see. And so I was like, okay, that's fine, I guess. I was like kind of expecting more, I don't know, more help, I guess. So anyways, I go home and I'm like waiting for, this information to be sent to me. And it was never sent to me. So I was like, that's cool. Not great when someone's like crying in your office asking for mental health help to like not follow through. But anyways, that kind of reinforced my medical anxiety, and I was like, okay, well, I just have to do this by myself, I guess. It was probably, July at this time, and I was like, okay, I need to find a therapist then. So I started this process all over again where I was like researching therapists. And again, it's quite stressful. It's not like there is a website where you can look, but it's not like, so many reviews of like what this person is like and all this stuff. And there's like a lot of different websites and blah, blah, blah. So I like started emailing people because email is a much easier form of communication for me. Some of them answered back. A lot of them said, they're not taking clients right now, which is fine, whatever. And so eventually I was like, again, just very desperate. And I ended up calling this place that was like a service, like not a specific therapist. It was like a chain. I don't know. Like, it was really strange. But anyways, I was talking to this girl and I told her what I was looking for. I think I did mention autism. And I mentioned that I wanted to see a female therapist. And so she, I guess, like looked through the list of the therapists that were in my area and she like, this one will work. And so I was like, okay, let's set up an appointment. And so I did. And then the thing about this like therapy like business chain that I called is that you have to pay a monthly subscription on top of like paying your therapist. And like I was like, this is not cool, but I was so desperate at the time that I was like, whatever, just sign me up. I think it was like $45 a month, and then your like the copay for my therapist was like $25 per session. I'm like, that's kind of crappy to be like, taking advantage of people who are struggling. But anyways, that's like a rant for another video, I guess. Anyways. So anyways, it comes to my appointment time, and I'm of course extremely nervous because I've never been to therapy, and I was quite stressed. However, my therapist was extremely nice, and she was like very, what's the word, like affirming. And so I immediately brought up autism because I knew if I didn't like immediately bring it up, I might not be able to. And so I was basically like, I'm experiencing a lot of anxiety and depression, and I'm pretty sure I have undiagnosed autism. But it was more like me saying that in between sobbing because I was so overwhelmed. And like, it really was like everything inside of me just like came out because I hadn't really talked to anyone like in depth about these things, and so it did feel good to sort of like release all of this onto someone. And she didn't like dismiss me. She just said like, well, I'm not qualified to diagnose autism, but we can help like treat the like, I don't know, symptoms, I guess you could say. So anyways, she was really nice, and I had a few sessions with her, and I found it to be quite stressful, just like therapy, but I was also just very stressed in general at this time. But like just having to talk about my problems every week, it was just very stressful. And so after a few sessions, I told her that I wanted to pursue an autism diagnosis, and I would love if she would help me figure out how to do that. So she very nicely offered to talk to her colleagues and find some people that they had referred their clients to for adult autism diagnosis. And so she did this, and she emailed me a list, basically. And then at my next session with her, she mentioned that she had worked with one of these people before, and they had done gender-affirming therapy, like for trans people. And that to me was like, okay, this person sounds legit, like they'll understand gender issues with the diagnosis process. Basically, after that, I stopped seeing the therapist because I wanted to focus on the autism diagnosis. I emailed the psychologist. Actually, I called. I think I called them. Yeah. Maybe? Yeah, I don't know. I think I called them. And I talked to her like receptionist or assistant or whatever. And I guess I was able to set up an appointment. Sorry, my memory is a bit fuzzy of all of this. But this was September at this time. My first appointment with her was in September. So the first appointment I had with her was kind of just like preliminary, like general questions just to make sure that it was worth going through with the assessment process. And I like broke down crying again, of course, because I was so overwhelmed. I remember like sitting in her office and just like feeling like I was going to just break. Like I was just like so freaked out because this is like a really stressful thing. So anyways, it was a lot of like her asking me questions about, my childhood, what stuff I'm struggling with now, blah blah blah. Basically just general sort of questions that would give her an idea of like me, who I am, and like what I struggle with and all this stuff. And so at the end of this appointment, she's like, okay, yes, I think we have enough to move forward with the assessment. And so she said that we have to first get approval from my health insurance, which can take a week or two or something. And so I left and I was like, okay, well, she thinks there's enough to get an assessment. So like there's something there. But like the wait for my insurance to approve the assessment was excruciating. And I believe it was like a week and a half before I got the call from them to be like, okay, we can go ahead and schedule the assessment. And so I think we scheduled it for the next week after that. Pretty sure. But yeah, this entire time period I was just like freaking out because it's just so stressful. And also during the first session I had with her, she gave me some documents to fill out for the assessment, and so some of those were self-report forms that I filled out, and others were there's supposed to be someone that knows you well that fills them out, so my fiance filled them out. And she was also really great because I told her I didn't want to tell my parents about this at the time, and she's like, that's fine. We'll just go off of what you can remember and like what your fiance knows of you. And I also told her that my memory is like really, really bad. So I don't have a super great memory of my childhood, and so I just kind of gave her what I could remember, and she's like, that's fine. She kind of said like, sometimes, you may not even have problems until adulthood, and then we need to look at like what you're experiencing now and like treat what is happening now, which I thought was really nice. And so anyways, when I was waiting for this approval, I filled out these forms. I will also mention that I did the very autistic thing of making a binder of like symptoms, and it was like very extensive and large, and I had it like sectioned off, and I included like online tests I had taken, and I had lists of like traits or whatever. It was quite a large binder, so she was quite appreciative of this binder because it gave her a lot of information. And I made it because I personally struggle to communicate when I'm stressed, or just in general, and I knew I wouldn't be able to get all of the information out correctly if I did not write it down beforehand. So that was my way of, I don't know, making sure she has all the information she needs. And so we made the appointment, and I'm obviously freaking out. The assessment itself was, I want to say 3 hours, I think. But anyways, it was more questions, sort of stuff that she wanted to clarify and things like that. And then it was also, a majority of the time was spent doing these like tests, like there were like puzzles you had to solve and word problems, memorization type things. What else? Again, my memory is quite fuzzy, but it was just like a bunch of like little tests, puzzles, and things like that. I had no idea what she was testing us, and I hadn't researched it because I wanted to make sure that I was like giving an authentic like answer, or like I didn't want to alter the test in any way, you know. So I had no idea what the heck we were doing. But yeah, that was mainly what the assessment was. It was like all these little tests and puzzles and word problems and things like that. And she asked me some more questions, clarifying questions. And that was it, basically. She's like, okay. She didn't like give me any indication of like what she thought, which was like gut-wrenching for me because I'm like so stressed about it. But she's like, okay, I'm gonna like go over all this stuff, and we will schedule like a day for us to go over the results. And so I think between the assessment and like my last appointment, final appointment, was like either a week or 2 weeks. I can't remember. And again, it was like excruciating. Also, an aside, I wanted to mention that her assistant, like her office, lets you schedule appointments via text message, and that was like, oh my god, that is such a like life-saving thing, and I don't understand why more businesses don't do it. Like, it saves me so much mental energy, and it's such a good accommodation, and like it's so easy to use. Why do we not use that? Anyways, I wanted to shout that out because like it was like, I know it sounds silly that I can't like make a phone call, but like being able to just write out what I need and then it's done, like that is life-changing. And I wish it was more common. Like, can we please make that more common and valid? Please. Anyways, what was I saying? So the wait for the last final appointment was excruciating, and so I went to my final appointment, and basically she was just going over the results. She went like into like what each thing tested and how I did and blah blah blah, and she said yes, like you're autistic, and she mentioned that like clinical doctors may not acknowledge that I'm autistic because I don't even know the wording she used, but because I'm not like the stereotype. But like in her report, she mentioned like masking and gender differences and all these things. I guess I should mention, like, she wrote up a report that she sent me, and with like all of my diagnoses, and that was in there, which I thought was nice. But like even she acknowledged like that some like doctors will probably dismiss me. Like, that sucks. And like even with a diagnosis in my hand, like I can't trust like a medical professional to take me seriously. Anyways. So basically we just went over her report, and she asked me if I had any questions and that sort of thing. And I remember asking her, like, are there any sorts of programs for autistic adults or, help? And she was basically like, no, they're all for children, sorry. If you find anything, let me know. And I'm like, cool. So it's like, oh, you're autistic, but have fun out there. Yeah, anyways. So, but she was super nice. And she was like, if you ever need anything, just email me, blah, 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 whatever. And then after this appointment was over, she like emailed me or sent me the report so that I could have it for myself. And in this report, it basically went over like, there was like a general summary of her thoughts, and she went through like every test we did and like what it measured and how I did. And one of the things that I thought was interesting that I kind of didn't really know about myself, I mean, I guess I don't know, I just never thought about it, was that I have a lower like processing speed, like I don't process things as quickly. And I was like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. Or like verbal processing, something like that. And there was like another thing like that where it was just like, oh, okay, that also makes sense. It was interesting, like eye-opening. But anyways, at the end of the letter, she had like my diagnoses listed, and she also gave me sort of like a letter that I could use for jobs, for like a list of accommodations I could use, which I thought was nice. And yeah, after that I was like, okay, I'm autistic, and what do I do with this information? Anyways, at this point I had quit my job because I was quite unwell, and I basically just worked through the point where I would have insurance to pay for this assessment, and then I quit because I just like literally could not go on any longer. If you're wondering what the cost of the assessment was, I paid, let me think, probably like $75 for like copays, and without health insurance it would have been, I think, like $800, which like I think is on the lower end for assessments. But she was very like aware of like, I don't know, financial issues people might have, and she said she keeps like the assessments as short as possible, so that insurance can pay for it, because I guess there's like a certain hour mark that you can't go over or something. I don't know. But anyways, without insurance it would have been $800. But thankfully my insurance paid for it. And I guess I should also mention that I live in the United States. It's gonna be, this like process is gonna be different anyway. Like even in the United States, it's gonna be different everywhere. But I just thought I would share my experience, what I did, how I got there, like, because I know when I was going through this process, I like sucked up every piece of information about it I could. So here's me putting mine into the universe for you to listen to if you want. But that's kind of the brief synopsis of how I got my diagnosis last year. And again, it was the end of October when I got my diagnosis originally. I started the assessment process in September, so yeah. Anyways, thank you to the person who suggested this, and I hope that this, is helpful information for some people perhaps. Or maybe you just wanted to listen to me ramble on top. That's fine too. And maybe I'll make another video about like the reasons why I was seeking a diagnosis. Let me know if you're interested in that. I mean, I feel like I kind of touch on them in other videos, so I don't know. But yeah, that is the process I went through, and I just want to say it was very, very stressful. It was very, very difficult. Having to dump your deepest, darkest secrets onto a person you don't even know is not a pleasant experience, and it's kind of traumatizing, to be honest, and I don't think I could ever do it again. So if you're not able to do it, just like, it's totally valid. Like, it's hard emotionally, like mentally, financially, like, it's just logistically, like, it's just not easy to do as an adult, so no worries. That's why I don't give anyone any crap for being self-diagnosed, because like the systems are screwed up, y'all. It's not good. Anyways, enough rambling. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments, and yeah, I don't know if I covered everything very well, but hopefully it was informative in some way. But as always, thanks for hanging out with me today and listening to me ramble. And I will see you in the next video. Okay?